There was a village called Niru, and it was once a happy place. The people there were kind to each other, and they worked hard every day. They lived close to a wide, flowing river. This river gave them clean water to drink, and it also helped them wash their clothes, cook their meals, and take care of their animals. The river was like a gentle friend who was always there. But one morning, everything changed. When the villagers woke up, they found that the water had a strange smell. It did not smell fresh anymore. It smelled rotten, as if something bad had crawled into it and died. No one understood what had happened, and this made them very worried. The people of Niru gathered near the river to talk about the smell. Some were holding clay pots and bowls, trying to catch a bit of water to taste. Others pinched their noses and frowned. Ada, a woman who sold fruits in the market, knelt by the river and tried to wash a few oranges. But as soon as she dipped them into the water, she pulled them out and sniffed, then made a face. "This is no good," Ada said. "The smell is so strong it will make anyone sick." She looked around and spotted Obi, who was a quiet hunter with gentle eyes. "Obi," she called, "have you ever smelled something like this before?" Obi shook his head. He was a man who preferred action to words, but today he had no answer. He remembered how just a week ago, the water had been clear and sweet. He would drink it right from his cupped hands after returning from the forest. Now he could not even stand near it without feeling a twist in his stomach. "No, Ada," he said softly. "This is strange. I cannot explain it." The crowd grew larger. Ife, who made pots and plates out of clay, rushed over, holding a small pot in her hands. She dipped it in the water and pulled it up quickly, waving her hand in front of her nose. "I have never smelled anything so awful," Ife said, narrowing her eyes. "How will I sell my pots if people cannot trust the water they pour into them?" She looked angry and scared at the same time. Others joined her in complaining. A young girl tried to drink and spat it out, crying that it tasted bitter and foul. An old man named Ibe said, "Maybe there is a dead animal upstream," and a woman named No said, "Perhaps the spirits are angry with us." Many whispered in low voices, guessing at what could have made the river change. But none of these guesses made anyone feel better. After all, the river had been good to them for as long as they could remember. Why would it suddenly turn bad? Obi watched quietly as people argued. Some blamed the fishermen, saying they must have left rotten fish in the water. Others blamed the farmers for washing dirty tools in the river. Obi did not think these things were true. He remembered stories from the elders that the river was tied to the heart of the land. If the water was sick, maybe something worse was happening. He wished he could speak to the queen, Ava, who was supposed to protect the village. She had not come out to calm them, and he found that odd. By midday, most of the villagers were upset and tired. They stood in groups, waving their arms, shaking their heads, and trying hard to understand this problem. Ada approached Obi again, her arms crossed over her chest. "Obi, we must speak to the queen," she said. "We cannot just stand here." Ife joined them, resting her pot on her hip. "Yes," she said, "the queen must hear our worries. Maybe she can send someone to find out what is wrong with our water." Others agreed, and soon they walked towards the palace. The palace was not large or fancy, but it stood at the edge of the village, painted in bright colors. 2 guards stood at the gates, holding long wooden spears. They looked proud and strong. Ada stepped forward and said, "We need to speak to Queen Ava. Our water smells very bad. We must know what to do." The guards frowned and looked at each other. One of them said, "The queen is busy. She will see no one right now." Ife began to argue, "But this is important. The whole village is in trouble. We cannot wait. Please let us in." The guard shook his head again. "The queen told us not to let anyone pass today." Obi raised a hand to calm Ife. He saw something in the guard's eyes, a look of worry or fear. "Why will the queen not see us?" Obi asked in a gentle voice. The guards did not answer. They only closed the gate more firmly. This made the villagers more uneasy. Ada gave a small sigh and turned away. As they left, the wind carried the rotten smell of the river to their noses once again, as if to remind them that the problem was still there. Back in the village center, people tried to go on with their day. But washing clothes and preparing meals was hard when the water smelled so bad. A little boy cried because he was thirsty, but his mother dared not give him the dirty water. A farmer tried to water his small garden and noticed the leaves of his plants curling up as if in pain. Ada washed her fruits in a bit of old water she had saved from yesterday. Even that water had started to smell. Ife wiped her pots clean with a cloth instead of water, grumbling about how hard it was to keep things clean. As evening came, Obi stood near the river again, staring at the murky surface. The smell was heavier now, like a thick, rotten blanket hanging over the water. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the sound of the queen's laugh from years ago, when she used to walk among them and ask about their troubles. He could not understand why she stayed hidden now that her people needed her. He opened his eyes when he heard voices near him. 2 elders stood at the edge of the river, talking in whispers. One elder, who had a long beard, said, "Do not say such things out loud. You know what happened the night Ozzy went missing." The other elder, who had gray hair, replied, "But the smell grows worse every day. The people will soon ask questions. They will not stop until they find the truth." Obi stiffened at the mention of Ozzy. Ozzy was a gentle maiden who had disappeared a few months ago. She was kind and sweet, and many in the village had liked her. No one knew where she had gone. People said maybe she left to find work in another place, but no one was sure. Now these elders were linking Ozzy's name to the smell in the river. Obi's heart beat faster. He wanted to ask them what they meant, but he was afraid to scare them away. He stayed very still, listening. The elder with the gray hair lowered his voice. "We must not bring Ozzy's name into this. If the queen hears of it, we may be punished." The other elder sighed. "But if we do nothing, the water will only get worse. The village cannot live like this." Obi wanted to know more. He took a careful step forward, trying not to make a sound. But a stick snapped under his foot, and the elders turned, startled. They saw him at once. The one with the beard hissed, "Be careful, boy. You do not know what you are stepping into." Then they hurried away, their eyes wide with fear. Obi watched them go, confusion filling his mind. What secret were they hiding? And what did Ozzy have to do with it? Night fell and the village grew quiet. The homes were mostly dark, except for a few lamps shining through small windows. The sound of coughing drifted here and there, as some people were starting to feel sick from the foul smell. Obi returned to his small hut, but he could not rest. He paced around the room, thinking of Ozzy, the queen, and the strange smell. He remembered the queen's guards refusing to let them in, and he remembered how Ozzy's sweet smile had brightened the village before she vanished. Just then, Ada appeared at his doorway. She looked tired, her hair tied back in a loose scarf. "Obi," she said softly, "we must do something. We cannot wait for the queen. The children are coughing. My fruits taste strange after I wash them. We are all worried." Obi sighed and rubbed his forehead. "I know, Ada. I tried to learn more, but no one will speak." Ada stepped inside, lowering her voice. "I heard some people say that the queen knows what happened. I do not want to believe that, but why else would she hide?" Ife came soon after, slipping into the hut with a tense look on her face. "I tried to sell my pots, but everyone is worried about the water. No one wants to buy anything. They say they must save their coins for clean water from far away. This cannot go on. We must find the truth." Obi listened to both women. He trusted them. They were strong and cared about the village. "I think the elders know something," Obi said. "I heard them mention Ozzy. Remember Ozzy? She went missing without a word. Why would the smell in our river make them think of her?" Ada clasped her hands together. Ozzy was a kind girl. She would never leave without saying goodbye. Something bad must have happened. Ife nodded. "If Ozzy was harmed, maybe that is why the river is angry," she said, her eyes narrowing. Obi did not laugh at Ife's words. He remembered old stories that said the river was alive in a way, that it could feel the pain of the land and the people. The 3 friends stood in silence for a long moment. Outside, the wind blew gently, but it did not carry away the awful smell. Finally, Obi spoke again. I must learn the truth, he said. I cannot sleep while our people suffer. I cannot pretend that this is normal. I must be brave and look for answers. Ada reached out and touched his arm. You will not be alone, Obi. If there is danger, we will face it together. Ife nodded, setting her jaw firmly. Yes, Obi. We stand by you. But please be careful. Obi nodded slowly. I will be careful. I will start by watching and listening. The elders are afraid of something. The queen is hiding something. Ozzy's name is whispered like a secret. I do not know how it all fits together. But I will not stop until I find out. He walked to the small window of his hut and looked out. In the darkness, he could see the shape of the river, shining faintly under the moonlight. The smell made him swallow hard. He imagined what might lie beneath that dark surface. He thought of Ozzy's gentle voice. He wondered if the queen's silence was hiding a cruel act. He wondered if the rotten smell was a warning, a cry for justice. The night felt heavy. The village was afraid, and Obi could feel that fear pressing on his heart. But he also felt a small fire inside him. He cared for Niru and its people. He cared for Ada and Ife, for the children and the old folks who deserved clean water and peaceful days. He would find a way to make things right. As he stepped away from the window, Obi knew that his path would not be easy. But he had made a choice. He would start by asking more questions. He would follow the small clues he had and see where they led. He would not rest until he understood why their water smelled so bad. And maybe, just maybe, he would learn what happened to Ozzy, and why no one dared speak her name out loud. Outside, the river kept flowing, carrying its hidden secrets through the sleeping village of Niru. That same night, Obi lay awake in his small hut, thinking about everything he had learned. Ada and Ife had gone home, their faces filled with worry. It was quiet outside, but the smell of the water drifted in through the window, making it hard for Obi to sleep. He kept seeing Ozzy's gentle smile in his mind, and he kept hearing the whispers of the elders who were so afraid. He knew he could not wait any longer. He had to start looking for answers right away. Early the next morning, as the sun rose, Obi left his hut and walked through the village. People were already up, standing near the river, talking in low voices. They were hoping the smell might have gone away overnight, but it had not. In fact, it seemed stronger. Some children were coughing, and their mothers tried to calm them. Obi passed Ada's small stall where she sold fruits, but today she had nothing to sell. She was just standing there, looking sad and lost. Obi stopped and spoke to Ada. Ada, he said, I am going to talk to Oph, the old woman who knows many stories. She might have heard something about Ozzy or about strange things that happen to rivers. Ada looked at him with tired eyes. Good, she said. We need all the help we can get. Please be careful, Obi. Strange things are happening in our village. Obi nodded and walked on, his steps firm. Soon he reached Oph's hut. It stood on the edge of the village near a few tall trees. Oph was known for her wisdom and her stories. Some said she knew secrets from long ago. Obi knocked softly on the wooden door, and after a moment, Oph opened it. She was old and thin, with white hair and kind eyes. She looked at Obi and smiled weakly. Good morning, child, she said. Why do you come so early? Obi stepped inside and sat on a small stool. Oph, he began, I need your help. Our river smells bad. The queen will not speak to us. Ozzy is missing, and I fear something terrible has happened. Oph's face became serious. She walked slowly to a corner and took a seat on an old mat. Ozzy. Yes, I remember that girl, Oph said quietly. She was kind and helpful. One day she was just gone. The village tried not to speak of it. But I have not forgotten. Obi leaned forward. Oph, do you know anything about what could make a river smell like this? Could it have something to do with Ozzy? The elders seemed afraid to mention her name. Oph closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them slowly. I cannot say much. I only know stories. Long ago, if a great wrong was done to the land or to a pure soul, the river might show its anger. The river holds memory. If someone caused a deep harm in secret, sometimes the river's water would turn bitter or smell strange, as if crying out. Obi felt a chill. "So you think someone did something terrible?" he asked. Oph nodded sadly. "I fear so. But be careful, Obi. To learn the truth, you may face danger. Not everyone wants these secrets told." Obi thanked her and rose to leave. As he opened the door, Oph said one last thing. "If you want answers, look near the old baobab tree. That place holds many voices of the past. Go at night, when those who hide secrets think no one is watching." Outside, Obi walked away, thinking about Oph's words. He decided to try once more to speak with the palace guards. Maybe he could learn why the queen hid behind locked doors. He made his way through the village, passing Ife's place. She was cleaning her pots with a rag, looking angry and frustrated. When she saw Obi, she called out, "Obi, are you sure you want to do this alone? The queen's guards are not friendly." Obi walked over to her. "Ife, I must try," he said. "I spoke to Oph. She hinted that something bad happened that made the river angry. I will try to speak to the guards again." Ife put down her pot. "Then I will watch from a distance. If anything goes wrong, I can run and get Ada or others." Obi smiled at her. "Thank you, Ife. Your strength gives me courage." When Obi reached the palace gates, he found the same two guards standing there, their faces stern. He raised his hand calmly. "Good morning. The river smells even worse now. People are getting sick. Can we please speak to Queen Ava? We must know if she has a plan to help us." The guards looked nervous. One of them said, "The queen is busy. She has many worries. Go home." But Obi did not leave right away. He stayed, looking the guard in the eye. "Please," he said, "the village cannot wait. We need answers. Where is the queen's new child? Should we not see the child and celebrate, like we always do when a royal baby is born?" The guard tightened his grip on his spear. "That is none of your business," he said sharply. The queen said no visitors. The second guard glanced around, as if worried someone might hear them. "Obi," he said softly, "go home before you cause trouble. I am warning you." Obi noticed fear in the guard's eyes. It was unusual to see a palace guard look scared. He wondered if the guard was afraid of the queen, or afraid of what Obi might learn. Without another word, Obi stepped back and walked away. He met Ife around the corner. She had watched the whole thing. "They are hiding something," she said. "I could see it in their faces." Obi nodded. "Yes, they are. I think the queen had a baby, but no one has seen it. There is something odd about that." Ife frowned. "We must be careful. If the queen or her guards think we are too curious, they might harm us." Obi took a deep breath. "I know, but I must learn the truth. Tonight I will go to the old baobab tree." Oph said I might find clues there. Maybe I can find something that explains why Ozzy disappeared, or why the river smells so bad. That night, when the village had grown quiet and most people were asleep, Obi slipped out of his hut. The moon was high, lighting his path just enough. He moved softly past dark huts and silent paths until he reached the old part of the village. The baobab tree stood tall, its thick trunk and wide branches like a giant's arms. Obi had always thought this tree looked wise, as if it had watched many secrets come and go. As he drew closer, the smell of the river seemed to follow him. He listened to the rustling leaves. The night air felt heavy. He circled the tree once, looking at the ground. At first, he saw nothing special. But then, near the roots of the tree, he found small pieces of broken pottery. He knelt down and picked one up. It felt smooth in his hand, and it had a strange mark. He held it closer to the moonlight and saw that it looked like the royal crest, the same design painted on the queen's palace walls. Obi's heart began to beat faster. Why would broken pottery with the royal crest be hidden here? He searched more. He found a piece of cloth buried under loose soil. The cloth was torn, but Obi could tell it was fine and rich. It looked like something that belonged to a noble family, not a common villager. He carefully wrapped the cloth around the pottery shard and slipped them into his bag. Just then, he heard voices. Obi pressed himself against the tree trunk, trying not to breathe too loudly. Two figures came near, holding a small lantern that cast a weak, flickering light. By their clothes, Obi guessed they were palace servants. They spoke in low, shaky voices. "I cannot sleep," the first servant whispered. "The queen grows more uneasy each day. She knows the people are angry. The river's smell is getting worse, and soon they will ask about Ozzy." The second servant looked around nervously. "Do not say Ozzy's name too loud," they warned. "If anyone hears us, we could be punished. Remember what happened under this very tree. The queen made us help with that dreadful act. We must never speak of it." Obi froze, trying to catch every word. The servants moved closer, and he could see their faces were pale with fear. The first servant said, "Ozzy did nothing wrong. She was pure and kind. But the queen wanted a child, and someone told her that a sacrifice would help her have a baby. She chose Ozzy. We were forced to help. I can still hear Ozzy's cries in my dreams." The second servant put a hand over their mouth as if to stop from sobbing. "Hush," they said. "The queen said this must stay secret. But now the river hates us. It smells like death. I fear the queen's child is cursed because of this evil act." Obi felt his stomach turn. He wanted to jump out and scream at them, to demand they fix this. But he knew that if he did, they might run or raise an alarm. He held his breath and listened. The first servant whispered, "What if someone finds out? The people are already upset. If they learn Ozzy was sacrificed to help the queen have a baby, they will never forgive her. The river will never be clean again until this secret is known. But if we tell, we will share Ozzy's fate." The second servant nodded, tears in their eyes. "We must remain silent, or else the queen's wrath will fall on us." They turned and slowly walked away, their lantern bobbing in the darkness until they were gone. Obi waited a long time before he dared to move. His hands shook. He pressed his back against the baobab tree, thinking about Ozzy, about the queen, about the baby that was born from this terrible act. The pieces fit together in a way that made him sick. The queen must have sacrificed Ozzy to gain a child, and now the river was angry, filling the village with a foul smell. It was like the land was crying for justice. Quietly, Obi crept away, his heart heavy. He made his way back through the silent village, stepping carefully so he would not wake anyone. As he passed Ife's hut, he thought about telling her right now, but he decided to wait until morning. He needed time to calm himself. He would tell Ada and Ife everything, and together they would find a way to reveal this awful truth to the village. They needed proof, and Obi had the pottery shard and the cloth. He also had the words he had just heard from the servants. When he reached his hut, he lit a small lamp and placed the pottery shard and cloth on a low table. He looked at them, tears filling his eyes. Ozzy had been innocent. She had never deserved such a fate. The queen, who was supposed to protect them, had done a terrible thing in secret. Obi wondered what would happen when the villagers learned the truth. They would be angry and hurt. Some might want revenge. But hiding the truth would only make the water worse and the village weaker. Obi blew out the lamp and lay down on his mat, staring up at the dark ceiling. He did not sleep much that night. He kept hearing the servants' words over and over. He kept seeing Ozzy's face and imagining her last moments. He hated that he had to keep quiet for now, but he knew he must be careful. In the morning, he would speak to Ada and Ife. He would show them the evidence. They would figure out a plan together, a plan to free the village from this terrible secret. Outside, the moon sank lower, and the stars faded. The river flowed on, smelling foul and thick. But in Obi's heart, a small spark of courage burned. He might be scared, he might be sad, but he knew what he had to do. He would not let Ozzy's death be hidden anymore. He would not let the queen's act poison their home. He would fight for the truth even if it meant putting himself in danger. And so the night passed, and the morning crept closer. Obi waited for the first light, ready to share what he had learned and begin the path to justice. When the first light of morning touched the rooftops of Niru, Obi was already awake. He had barely slept, and his eyes felt heavy. But he knew he had no time to waste. He picked up the pottery shard and the torn cloth he had found near the baobab tree, and he wrapped them in a small piece of cloth to keep them safe. He then stepped outside, breathing in the early air that still held a hint of the foul smell from the river. As Obi made his way through the village, he could see that everyone looked more worried than ever. A few children sat on the ground, weak and coughing. Their mothers tried to hush them with kind words, but their eyes were full of fear. Obi passed a group of men arguing about how to find fresh water. Ada stood near her empty fruit stall, looking lost. Ife was kneeling in front of her pots, staring at them as if she wished they could give her answers. Obi walked over and spoke softly. Ada, Faye, I need to speak with both of you. I must show you something. Ada turned her tired eyes on him. Ife stood up quickly, brushing the dust off her knees. What is it, Obi? Ife asked. Did you learn something new last night? Obi nodded and said, Not here. Let's go inside my hut. We need to talk in private. The three of them stepped into Obi's small hut. It was dim and quiet inside. Obi placed a small wooden stool for Ada and Ife to sit on, while he sat on the ground. He carefully unwrapped the pottery shard and the cloth, showing them what he had found under the baobab tree. Ada leaned forward, squinting at them. Ife raised a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide. Obi, Ada said in a shaky voice, these look like something from the palace. Ife nodded. Yes, I recognize the pattern. This must be the queen's crest. Why was it buried under that tree? Obi took a deep breath. I waited near the baobab tree last night. 2 palace servants came by. They talked about Ozzy, and they said something terrible. His voice cracked a little as he remembered the servants' words. He told Ada and Ife everything he had heard. The queen wanting a child, the secret sacrifice of Ozzy, and the fear the servants felt. When he finished, both women looked pale. Ada pressed her lips together. Ozzy was such a gentle soul. She never harmed anyone. This is too cruel. Ife's hands balled into fists. I cannot believe our queen could do this. Forcing a girl to die just to have a baby? How could she? Obi frowned. This is why the river smells so bad. It is like the land itself is crying out because of this evil act. The queen's silence, the hidden child. It all makes sense now. They sat quietly for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, people's voices rose and fell, but inside the hut, it felt like a storm was building in their hearts. Ada looked at Obi. We must tell the others, she said firmly. We cannot let the queen's secret remain hidden. Ife nodded. Yes, we have proof now. We have words and these items that do not belong under a baobab tree. But how do we tell the others? The queen still has guards, and they will not let us spread this story easily. Obi rubbed the back of his neck. I think we should speak with the elders, he said. They are respected. If the elders believe us, then the people will listen. But before we do that, we must be careful. The queen might try to stop us if she learns we know her secret. Ada frowned. The elders will need strong proof. They will need to hear something from inside the palace, not just from us. We must find someone else who knows the truth and will confirm it. The people trust the elders, but the elders trust proof. Ife stood up, her eyes shining with anger. Then we must go back to the guards or maybe find a servant who will talk to us. We have to make them speak. Obi stood as well. We must try, but we cannot let them know we have these items. He wrapped the shard and cloth again and placed them in a safe corner of his hut. I will try to get the guards to talk or find someone inside the palace who can confirm Ozzy's story. Maybe I can pretend to be friendly, to ask if the queen has any plans for the village. If they slip up, we will have what we need. Ada touched Obi's arm gently. Please be careful. If the queen learns that you know the truth, who knows what she might do? Ife sighed and glanced at the door. We should not wait too long. The water grows worse each day. They left Obi's hut and headed toward the palace again. People watched them curiously, wondering what they were up to. At the palace gates, the same 2 guards stood watch, looking more nervous than before. When they saw Obi, Ada, and Ife coming, they tightened their grip on their spears. Obi held up his hands to show he meant no harm. Good morning, he said softly. We are worried about the village. Our children are coughing, and the water is not safe. Please, Can you tell us if the queen will do something soon? The guard on the left tried to look strong, but his eyes flickered with worry. The queen says you must trust her. Go home. Ife stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. We cannot wait anymore. People are asking questions. Some say Ozzy's name. They wonder why she disappeared. They wonder why the river smells so bad. If the queen wants to keep peace, she must speak. The guard on the right hissed at her. Be quiet. Do not speak that name. He looked around quickly, as if someone might be listening. Ada took a deep breath. Why not? She asked. What is so dangerous about Ozzy's name? She was a villager like the rest of us. A good girl who vanished without a word. The guards trembled, and one of them lowered his voice. You do not know what you are saying. It is best to forget about Ozzy. Asking questions can bring punishment. The queen has warned us not to talk about such things. Obi narrowed his eyes. Punishment for what? For caring about our people? For wanting clean water? His words were soft, but they hit the guards like stones. The guards looked at each other, unsure what to say next. Just then, a soft whistle came from behind a nearby hut. Ada noticed it and nudged Obi and Ife. They slowly backed away from the palace gate. The guards watched them go, looking relieved to see them leave. They followed the sound of the whistle and found a hooded figure hiding behind a stack of firewood. Who are you? Ife asked, her voice low. The figure pulled back the hood. It was a palace servant, thin and scared, eyes darting left and right. Please, the servant whispered, do not speak so loudly. I have heard your words. I know you seek the truth about Ozzy. Obi's heart pounded. You know about what happened? He asked. The servant nodded quickly. I was forced to help bury Ozzy's body near the baobab tree. The queen threatened us. She said if we told anyone, we would suffer the same fate. Ada put a hand over her mouth, tears shining in her eyes. Ife clenched her fists. The servant swallowed hard. I cannot live with this secret anymore. The smell of the river is the smell of our sin, our wrong deed. The land is angry because Ozzy was pure and innocent. The queen thought Ozzy's death would bring her a child and make the child special. But that child is cursed, and now we all pay the price. Obi reached out and touched the servant's arm gently. Will you tell this to the elders? We must bring this secret out into the open so that we can try to fix what has been broken. The servant shook their head, eyes wide with fear. If I show myself, the queen's men will kill me. I cannot stand before the elders and speak. But I can give you something. The servant pulled a small piece of cloth from inside their robe. On it was a faded symbol, the same royal crest. This is from the cloth that covered Ozzy's face, the servant said, voice shaking. Take it. Show it to the elders. They know Ozzy's patterns. She wove a special thread in her bracelets and cloths. The elders can confirm it once belonged to Ozzy. Tell them what I said. Tell them they must act. Obi took the cloth piece carefully. Thank you. Your courage may save our village, he said. The servant's eyes filled with tears. I hope so, they whispered. I cannot stay here longer. Do not look for me again. With that, the servant slipped away, disappearing behind huts and drying fish racks. Ada, Ife, and Obi stood together, breathing hard. Ada wiped her eyes. We have more proof now, she said. Ife nodded, her voice firm. We must go to the elders. We must tell them what we know. If they stand with us, we can show the whole village what happened. Obi held the cloth close to his chest. Yes, we must be careful, but we must not delay. The people are growing desperate. The queen cannot hide forever. They walked back into the main part of the village, planning their next steps. They would call the elders to a quiet meeting by the old meeting tree. They would tell them about Ozzy, about the queen's child, and about the sacrifice that made the river smell like death. They would show them the cloth and the pottery shard, and explain what the servant said. As they passed through the village, some neighbors asked, Do you have news? Is the queen going to help us? Ada forced a small smile. We are working on it. Soon we will gather everyone. Please be patient. Ife looked at the frightened faces of the villagers and felt anger burn inside her heart. She would fight for these people. That evening, back in Obi's hut, they prepared to speak to the elders. Obi placed the cloth and shard on a low wooden table. Ada and Ife sat beside him. They spoke softly, going over what they would say, making sure each word would count. They knew it would be dangerous to accuse the queen, but they also knew that hiding the truth would only bring more pain. As the sun set, turning the sky orange and purple, the three friends knew that tomorrow would be a hard day. They would face the elders, they would share the secret, and they would risk the queen's anger. But they had no choice. The river's foul smell was a cry for truth and justice. If they did nothing, Ozzy's death would remain a secret, and the village would suffer forever. They could not let that happen. Ozzy deserved better. The children deserved clean water and safe homes. The truth would set them free, or at least give them a chance to save their land. With heavy hearts but strong wills, Obi, Ada, and Ife waited for the next day, ready to call the elders, show them the truth, and take the first step towards healing their wounded village. That next morning, the sun rose, but it did not bring hope. The village looked weaker than before. The people were scared and sick. The river smelled worse, and some of the children had fevers. Obi, Ada, and Ife knew they had to act fast. They had promised themselves that they would show the truth to the elders. But they worried if the elders would believe them without the final proof. They already had the piece of cloth and the pottery shard. But what if the elders still doubted? Obi sighed and said, "We must go back to the baobab tree tonight. We must dig deeper and see if we can find something that belonged to Ozzy. Maybe a bracelet or a piece of her clothing. We need something that the elders cannot deny." Ada looked frightened at the idea. "Obi, what if the guards are watching? The queen might have warned them that we are looking for the truth." Ife folded her arms. "We have no choice. If the elders do not believe us, the people will never know what happened. And the river will never be clean again." So they waited all day for the sun to fall. They did not spread any rumors. They did not argue with anyone. They stayed quiet, gathering their courage. The smell of the river hung in the air, making everyone uneasy. Once night came, the three friends slipped out of their huts and met near the edge of the village. The moon was bright, but they kept to the shadows. Slowly, they walked towards the old baobab tree. When they reached the tree, they were careful not to make noise. Obi took out a small tool to dig into the soil around the roots. He whispered, "Stay close and watch for anyone coming." Ada and Ife nodded, standing guard as Obi worked. The earth felt loose as if someone had dug there before. Obi's heart pounded. He remembered what the servant had said. Ozzy's body had been buried here. After a short while, Obi's fingers touched something soft but dirty. He pulled it out gently. It looked like a simple cloth band, perhaps a bracelet. Ada gasped when she saw it. "That looks like one of Ozzy's bracelets. She used to weave them with a special thread." Ife bent closer and nodded. "Yes, I remember. Ozzy gave me one a long time ago. She said she always used 3 tiny green threads hidden inside." "Look," Ife said, pointing at a tiny green thread peeking out of the dirty cloth. Obi felt a lump in his throat. This was real proof that Ozzy's body had been placed here. He dug a little deeper and found a small piece of pottery with Ozzy's name scratched on the inside. It was faint, but there, Ozzy. Obi gently wrapped these items in a clean cloth he had brought, his hands shaking. He could almost feel Ozzy's voice begging them to show the truth to everyone. Just then, Ada froze. "I hear something," she whispered. Ife and Obi stopped moving, holding their breath. Footsteps. They sounded heavy, like boots on dry leaves. Guards were coming. They must have guessed that someone would return here. Obi grabbed Ada's hand. "Hide behind the tree," he whispered. Ife pressed herself close to the trunk, and Ada tried to steady her breathing. 2 guards appeared, their lantern casting strange shapes on the ground. One guard muttered, "I know they will come here. The queen warned us. If we catch them, we must not let them leave alive." Ada's heart raced. She wanted to scream, but she kept silent. Ife clenched her teeth, ready to fight if they had to. Obi knew they could not face the guards in a fight. They had to stay hidden. The guards circled the tree, their lantern light shining on the dirt. If they looked closely, they might notice the fresh digging. For a moment, it felt like the guards would find them. The lantern beam passed right over their hiding spot. But just then, a sound came from the distance. Maybe a villager moving around or an animal rustling in a bush. The guards turned their heads and stepped away to check the noise. Obi used that chance to whisper, "Now go!" They slipped away quietly, keeping low to the ground. Ife almost tripped, but Ada caught her arm. They made it past a small cluster of bushes and kept going until they were sure the guards could not see them. At last, they found themselves back on a safe path. They did not stop until they reached Obi's hut. Once inside, they locked the door and sat down, breathing hard. "That was close," Ife said, wiping sweat from her forehead. Ada nodded. "I thought they would catch us for sure." Obi unwrapped the cloth with Ozzy's bracelet and the pottery piece, looking at them with sad eyes. "But we have it. We have what we need. Now the elders must believe us. We will show them Ozzy's bracelet and the cloth with the queen's crest. We will tell them what the servant said. Then they will see we are not lying." Ada agreed. "Yes, this will make them listen." Ozzy was known to the elders. They remember how kind she was. They know her weaving patterns. Once we show them this, they will have to help us. Ife clenched her fist. "And after the elders believe us, we will show the whole village. The queen cannot hide anymore. She must answer for what she did." They decided they would gather the elders at dawn, when everyone was awake but before the queen could stop them. They would call the elders under the old meeting tree in the village center, where important talks were held. There, they would tell the truth. How the queen sacrificed Ozzy, how she did it to have a special child, and how the river's foul smell was caused by this evil act. They would show them the items they had found and let the elders see the truth with their own eyes. Obi looked at Ada and Ife, his voice steady. "Tomorrow will be hard. The queen may try to deny everything. Her guards might try to scare us. But we must stand strong. We owe it to Ozzy and we owe it to the village. If we do nothing, the river will never be clean again." Ada took a deep breath. "I am ready. I will speak honestly, and I will not back down." Ife nodded firmly. "I will not be afraid. The people must know. Even if the queen tries to blame us, the truth will protect us." They tried to rest a little, though sleep did not come easily. The night passed slowly, with the smell of the river drifting in through the window, reminding them of the burden they carried. Each of them thought about Ozzy. They imagined her laughing and smiling, helping others, living a life cut short by the queen's greed. This gave them strength. They knew they were doing the right thing. As the first light of dawn touched the village roofs, Obi, Ada, and Ife stood up. They looked at each other with determined eyes. "It's time," Obi said. "Let's gather the elders and show them the truth." Together, they stepped out of the hut into the new day, ready to face whatever came next. At dawn, Obi, Ada, and Ife walked with steady steps toward the old meeting tree. Their faces were serious, and their hearts were heavy. They carried with them the evidence that would change everything. Ozzy's bracelet, the cloth with the queen's crest, and the shard of pottery with Ozzy's name. The sky was pink and gold, and most of the villagers were awake, worried about the water and waiting for any sign of hope. When they reached the old meeting tree, a few villagers followed them, curious to know what was happening. Ada whispered to Obi, "We must call the elders. They should be here before the whole village gathers." Ife nodded, stepping forward. "Elders," she called out, her voice loud and clear, "we beg you to come. We need to speak to you right now." One by one, the elders appeared, their faces wrinkled with worry. They stood in a small circle beneath the tree. Some leaned on walking sticks, others folded their arms. The oldest elder, Oph, spoke first. "Why have you called us so early?" she asked, looking closely at Obi, Ada, and Ife. "The village is troubled. The water still smells bad. You must have good reason to bring us here." Obi stepped forward, holding Ozzy's bracelet carefully in his hands. "Elders," he said, his voice shaking a bit, "we have found out why the water smells bad. We know the truth, and we must share it with you." The elders leaned closer. The villagers who had gathered looked at each other with confused eyes. Ada held up the cloth with the queen's crest. "This cloth was found near the baobab tree, where Ozzy's body was buried," she said. A gasp rose from the crowd. Oaf's eyes narrowed. "Ozzy? Buried near the baobab tree? What are you saying?" Ife stepped in, her voice firm. "The queen sacrificed Ozzy to have a child. After Ozzy was taken, the queen gave birth to a baby. But this evil act made the river turn foul." The elders looked at one another in shock. Some shook their heads, as if they could not believe what they were hearing. Others whispered Ozzy's name sadly. Oaf held out her hand. "Show me the bracelet. Show me what you have found." Obi placed Ozzy's bracelet in Oaf's hand. Oaf studied it closely, her old fingers touching the tiny green threads. "This is indeed Ozzy's work," Oaf said softly. "She wove these bracelets in a special way. There is no doubt that this belonged to Ozzy." A low murmur spread through the villagers. They remembered Ozzy's kindness, her laughter, and her gentle help. The thought that she was gone forever and buried in secret made them angry and sad. One of the elders said, "And you say the queen did this?" Ada nodded, tears in her eyes. "We have a servant's word. We have seen palace items buried with Ozzy's body. Why else would the queen's cloth be there? Why else would Ozzy's body be hidden, if not to cover a terrible crime?" Just then, as if drawn by the sound of so many voices, the queen's guards appeared at the edge of the crowd. They pushed people aside, and behind them came Queen Ava herself. She looked calm, but her eyes were cold. She wore rich robes, and her face showed no fear. The villagers parted, letting the guards and the queen stand before the elders. The queen spoke in a firm voice. "Why have you gathered here without my permission? Why do I hear my name whispered with such anger?" Oaf raised her chin and said, "Your people suffer. The water smells like death. They accuse you of harming Ozzy, of burying her by the baobab tree. They say you did it to have a child." Queen Ava's face turned pale, and her eyes flashed with anger. "This is nonsense," she shouted. "I would never harm Ozzy." She left the village to find a better life elsewhere. These three troublemakers are lying. They only wish to stir up fear. Ife stepped forward, holding out the piece of cloth with the queen's crest. "If Ozzy left, why did we find your cloth buried with her body? Why did we find Ozzy's bracelet under the baobab tree? Why do your own servants whisper of what happened that night?" The queen's guards raised their spears, but an elder shouted, "Stand down. This is a meeting of truth. You will not threaten us today." The guards looked unsure, glancing at their queen for orders. Queen Ava's face tightened, and she took a deep breath. "You know nothing," she said softly, but her voice shook. "You do not understand what it means to be queen. I must protect this village. I needed an heir. Is that so wrong?" A cry of shock and anger rose from the villagers. Some shouted, "Murderer!" Others wept, calling out Ozzy's name. The children clung to their mothers, confused and scared. Oaf raised her voice, "Silence," she called, and the crowd grew quiet. The old elder looked straight at Queen Ava. "You admit you needed an heir, but do you admit what you did to Ozzy?" The queen's lips trembled. She looked at the crowd, at the guards, at the elders, and then at Obi, Ada, and Ife. I was told by a traveling priestess that the land would not give me a child unless it received a pure soul in exchange. I did what I thought was needed." Her voice was quiet now, almost a whisper. "I wanted a baby so badly." Obi felt tears fill his eyes. "You took Ozzy's life," he said, struggling not to shout. "Ozzy, who was kind and harmless. You killed her dreams. And now the river is angry. The water smells because of what you have done." The queen bowed her head. The villagers were furious, their voices rising. "What kind of leader does this?" someone shouted. "She must pay," cried another. The guards looked around, unsure what to do. The elders stood firm, shocked and disappointed. Oaf spoke again, her voice shaking with sadness. "Queen Ava, you have broken the trust of your people. You have harmed an innocent soul. The land is crying out for justice. This cannot go unpunished. The queen looked up, tears now in her own eyes. I did not know it would make the river foul. I thought it was just a way to have a child. I never meant for the people to suffer this way. Ife shook her head. Your child is born out of a terrible act. The village will never accept this. The river will not be clean until Ozzy is honored and her story is known. Ada added, we must return Ozzy's body to a proper grave, where everyone can mourn her. We must show we are sorry. A heavy silence fell. Even the queen's guards seemed uncertain. Ulf took a step forward. Queen Ava, you cannot be trusted to rule us any longer. Your crime is too great. The elders will decide your fate. But you can no longer lead our people. The queen opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked around, searching for mercy, but found only angry and hurt faces. The villagers knew now why their water smelled like death. They would not forget Ozzy's name again. Obi, Ada, and Ife stood side by side, holding the items that proved the queen's guilt. They felt a mix of sadness and relief. The truth was finally known. They had done what they set out to do, even though it hurt their hearts to know how far the queen had fallen. The crowd pressed in closer, demanding answers, demanding justice. Ulf raised her hand once more, calling for calm. The queen stood trembling, as if the ground might swallow her up. The time for lies was over. The time for healing would begin now, but only after Ozzy was honored, and the queen's crime was made right. The elders and villagers stood together beneath the old meeting tree, the queen trembling before them. Queen Ava's eyes darted around, looking for a single friendly face, but no one met her gaze with kindness. The truth had come out. The people knew how Ozzy had been taken, how her life had fed the queen's cruel wish for a child. The air felt heavy, and many villagers were crying softly, whispering Ozzy's name like a prayer. Ulf, the oldest elder, raised her hand, calling for quiet. Everyone fell silent, waiting for her words. Queen Ava, Ulf said, her voice calm but firm, you broke the trust of your people. You took an innocent life. You must face the consequences. The other elders nodded in agreement. The crowd did not shout or cheer. Instead, they waited, holding their breath. The queen dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Please, she begged. I know what I did was wrong. I wanted a child, but I never meant to bring this curse on the village. Do not take my child from me. Her words sounded weak, empty. Ife shook her head and said, that baby is born from a terrible act. You must answer for what you've done. At this, some villagers demanded, show us the child. The queen hesitated, and the guards looked uncertain. Ulf agreed, yes, bring the child here. Let us see this child of sorrow. We must know what we are dealing with. The queen nodded slowly, afraid to refuse. She whispered to one of her guards, and he ran toward the palace. Obi, Ada, and Ife stood side by side, holding hands to keep their courage strong. Ada's heart ached for Ozzy. She whispered, Ozzy, we will make sure you are honored. Ife nodded, biting her lip. Obi's eyes were hard. He knew this day would change their village forever. The river still smelled foul, as if reminding them they had not yet made things right. After a few long moments, the guard returned, carrying a small, crying baby wrapped in fine cloth. The queen reached out her arms for the child, but the guard held back until Ulf nodded. The baby's cries were thin and weak. When the villagers saw the child, some gasped. The baby looked fragile, with a strange mark on the chest that looked like twisted roots. It sent shivers through the crowd. This is the heir born from Ozzy's sacrifice, someone whispered. A child brought here by pain. The queen sobbed, please, I love my baby. Do not harm him. Ulf shook her head. We are not here to harm the innocent child. The child did not choose this. You forced this fate on him. The child must be cleansed, just like our village must be cleansed. The elders agreed. The child might be cursed, but he was blameless in all this. Obi stepped forward. We must bury Ozzy properly, he said, his voice strong. We must show respect to her. The river will not be clean until we do what is right. The villagers nodded, tears on their cheeks, remembering Ozzy's gentle ways. Ada added, we must also remove Queen Ava from power. She cannot lead after such a crime. The queen lowered her head, knowing she had lost. The elders spoke among themselves quietly, and then Oph said, Queen Ava, you are no longer our queen. We strip you of your power. You will leave this village forever. The elders will choose new leaders who care for the people. The villagers murmured in agreement. The queen opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. She knew it was useless. The guards looked uncertain, but they did not raise their spears. They had also seen the truth and felt the shame. They stepped back, letting the villagers take control. The queen sat trembling, holding her baby, uncertain what her future would be. She had no friends here, no love or trust left. Her child cried softly, and she tried to soothe him, tears falling onto his tiny face. Oph turned to the villagers. Let us prepare Ozzy's body for a proper burial. Let us gather flowers, sing songs, and ask forgiveness from her spirit. People hurried away to find tools, flowers, and clean cloth. Obi, Ada, and Ife led a small group to the baobab tree, where Ozzy's remains had been hidden. They worked with gentle care, lifting Ozzy's body from the earth. Some people wept openly. Even the children understood that something very sad had happened. Back at the meeting tree, they laid Ozzy's body on a mat. The elders stood around, and the villagers formed a wide circle, holding hands, heads bowed. Oph spoke softly, Ozzy, we return you to the earth with respect and love. We are sorry that you suffered. We promise that your name will live in our hearts. We will never forget your kindness. Ada placed flowers around Ozzy's body, whispering a quiet goodbye. Ife took the pottery shard with Ozzy's name and set it by her side. Obi knelt, tears in his eyes. Ozzy, he said, we failed to protect you then, but we will not fail to honor you now. Rest in peace. The villagers began to sing a gentle song, a melody that rose and fell like a soft breeze. It was a song of healing and hope. As they sang, a strange feeling spread through the crowd. The air felt lighter. Some people dared to look toward the river. They could still smell something foul, but it seemed less strong. When the song ended, Oph said, now we must bury Ozzy by the clean hills, away from the secret place where she was hurt. We will build a small shrine so that we never forget her. The villagers carried Ozzy's body, walking slowly in a long line toward a peaceful spot with green grass and soft earth. They dug a gentle grave and placed her inside, covering her with flowers and clean soil. Everyone stood quietly as Oph whispered a final prayer. After the burial, the villagers returned to the center of the village. The queen and her child still waited, guarded by silence. Oph spoke again, her voice strong. The land may forgive us now that we have honored Ozzy, but our village must learn from this. We must choose better leaders. We must never let fear or greed lead us to do evil. A few villagers glared at the queen, and some shouted, go away. The queen stood, holding her baby tightly. She looked around at the angry faces and knew she could not stay. One elder stepped forward, holding a sack with a little food and a water gourd. Leave and never return, he said. Do not think of harming us again. The people will protect each other now. The queen bowed her head, tears running down her cheeks. She did not argue. She turned and walked away from Niru, leaving behind everything she had once known. As she vanished into the distance, the villagers stood together, not sure what would come next. That evening, the people gathered by the riverbank. They dipped their hands in the water, sniffing carefully. The smell was still there, but fainter. Ada said, we must give it time. The river must heal. Maybe tomorrow it will be a bit cleaner, and the next day even better. Ozzy's spirit will help us. Ife nodded, we must also help each other. No more secrets. No more silent suffering. Obi looked at the rippling water, the moon's light dancing on its surface. We did something hard today, but it was right. We faced the truth even though it hurt. I hope Ozzy rests in peace now. The villagers agreed to hold a cleansing ceremony. They called the priestesses, who came to sing over the river, asking for forgiveness and healing. As the priestesses chanted, the villagers lit small lamps and placed them along the riverbank. The gentle glow reflected in the water, turning it into a path of soft light. Obi, Ada, and Ife stood side by side, watching the ceremony. They felt proud, sad, and hopeful all at once. They had done something dangerous and important. They had freed the village from a secret that poisoned their water and their hearts. Ada whispered, "Will the baby ever come back?" Ife shook her head. "I do not know, but that baby must grow up knowing nothing of this land. Or one day he may return seeking answers." Obi frowned, thinking about that child and the strange mark on his chest. Would he remember what his mother had done to bring him into this world? Would he hate the village that drove them away? The future was not certain, but the villagers had learned that hiding evil only made it stronger. Now they would face their troubles together. As the night deepened, the smell from the river seemed weaker. A few villagers dared to taste a drop, finding it still bitter but less terrible. Of said, "Give it time. The river must heal, just like our hearts." They believed her. They would wait, they would pray, and they would care for each other. The village would become stronger after this wound. Still, in the darkness beyond the edge of the village, the queen and her child traveled alone. Perhaps she cursed the village under her breath, or maybe she wept for what she had lost. No one knew. Back in Niru, Obi, Ada, and Ife wondered what tomorrow would bring. They knew the story was not truly over. The world was wide, and new dangers could appear. But at least now, their village stood together, their eyes open to the truth. The next morning, the sky would be bright again, and the villagers would wake up, hoping to smell fresh air and taste clean water. They would remember Ozzy's gentle smile, the price paid for truth, and the courage that saved them all. Yet as they drifted to sleep that night, each one wondered, what if the queen returned one day, or what if her child came seeking what was taken from him? No one could say, but they would be ready. They had learned to face the dark secrets that poisoned their lives. Now, with Ozzy honored and the queen gone, they watched the soft glow of their lamps by the river and waited for morning light, unsure of what the future would bring, but certain they would face it together. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like and subscribe. Here is another interesting story to watch. Click to watch now.